I'm thrilled to be speaking with professional photographer Kirstie McConnell. Kirstie needs no introduction. She's well renowned in the photography world. She's the creative force behind the Pet Photographers Club and the podcast of the same name, now in its 17th series. That's a community that supports pet photographers worldwide through business and marketing education. Back in 2013, Kirstie became South Australia's very first photographer to specialise in pet photography. And then later, much more recently, she's made a move to Italy and now she's a family, travel and vacation photographer. Her business is known as Classico Portraits. She provides couples and families with incredible memories of their holiday anywhere in the country, and she captures fun and relaxed moments against stunning Italian backdrops. Working as both a photographer and a trusted mentor to photographers worldwide, obviously Kirstie knows a thing or two about marketing and how to develop a thriving photography business. So Kirstie, it's an honour to have you here. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
Hi, Zoe. Wow, that's quite an intro.
It's all
I hope
true.
I can live up to it.
So, Kirstie, as I mentioned, you've done so much and you have supported so many hundreds of photographers, perhaps thousands, through your podcast and through your membership. But how did it first get started, Kirstie? How did you find yourself in the photography world?
Yeah, okay. So I'm pretty fortunate, actually. I have to point that out, that my grandfather was a photographer. And so I don't know, like subconsciously, I guess, like, you're influenced by people around you your whole life. And without really knowing or appreciating, I guess I was in front of the camera quite a lot, but, because of him, every single birthday, Christmas, like he was taking photos of everyone just for fun, not as like a professional, but just because he appreciated the medium.
Yeah.
So I was exposed to photography a lot through him. Then it wasn't until I was probably 16, I suppose, year 10 at school, that we, as like my art subject at school, we did a part on photography. And it was a film, and we had a darkroom at my school. Now I'm showing that I'm older than my chubby cheeks. Anyway, and so we were one of the last years to do darkroom, actually. But anyway, So I got all excited. And, I'm not really an academic kind of person, but I was definitely into my art subject. And so I got all excited and I called my grandfather when I got home and I said, will you take me out like with your cameras? Because he had like Hasselblads and like, really nice gear.
Wow.
Of course. And even though he wasn't, didn't have his shop or studio anymore. Anyway, so yeah, we went out with some of his gear and he taught me through like, the basics of photography. And I just picked it up like really quickly. And like I said, I'm not an academic. So like me picking up stuff isn't necessarily like a given, but it just gelled with me. And then I ended up having actually a lot of time off school because I was sick. And it turned out that when I went back to school, even though I'd missed so much of this like photography, like, the basics of the darkroom and stuff, still I was helping the other kids because I just managed to absorb it so well. Anyway, I ended up spending the next like 3 years of school just going into the darkroom like every single lunch. That was my happy place, My teacher, when they closed down the darkroom, he gave me all the chemicals. Like my parents put me darkroom at home. I was super fortunate. Like
Nice.
Yeah, so it really was a passion for me, which I guess is like most photographers. And yeah, I went on to study photography. I did my diploma. And I managed to get a job before I even finished my diploma, working for a small studio in my hometown that did high-end weddings and portraits and newborns. And I worked there as an assistant and retoucher mostly for a little while. And yeah, that exposed me to everything because, at weddings, you have to really know your shit. Am I allowed to say that on this podcast?
Yeah.
So I learned, by observing mostly.
Yeah.
Kind of got up to date with like current trends because we went to conferences and stuff like that. Improved on my editing because it's not something we covered in my diploma. And then eventually my boss noticed that I kept taking the studio gear, which I was fortunate that I was allowed to do, and photographing my own dog. Flea, who I still have here. She's nearly 16.
Oh, cute.
So that's how long my photography journey has been going with pets, I suppose. Yeah, so I was photographing her a lot. And then eventually my boss said that I was going to start photographing pets for the studio. And remember, I wasn't a photographer for that studio at the time. I was just assisting. And so that's how it all began. Eventually I left there and I moved to Adelaide, South Australia, and started my pet photography business there. That was quite a long introduction into my story. Sorry.
No, it's all fascinating because I mean, some people find that they just find photography later in life, but it sounds like for you, it was literally there within the lifeblood of the family almost. And so it almost like it was a natural thing that you found your thing there, which is great. And to hear it's, been 16 plus years since and still going strong, it's amazing. After that experience that you've just explained, you went into pets at that point. Is that right to say?
Yeah, that's right. So I was 21 and, all the confidence in the world of a 21-year-old.
Yeah.
And I just picked up, moved like 1,000 kilometers away with no friends, no family, nothing, and started my pet photography business. Fortunately for me, like I said, I had a pretty good foundation. I had a bit of a head start, guys. So, keep in mind. But fortunately for me, I had that background with my photography, like study plus experience, like pretty much ideal. And also every single person in my family at the time. So this excludes like 2 sisters and 1 auntie, but otherwise everybody else is self-employed in my family.
Right.
And so
I thought you were going to say they all had pets, actually. So you had lots of pets to work with.
Well, they also all do have pets.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, they're all self-employed. And so I grew up like literally folding invoices and putting them in envelopes because, this was back in the day, and, sending them for my parents. I went to markets with my dad or expos with my dad, and I was like selling things, So I kind of had this like real life training of what business looks like. And so for me to end up going into self-employment was not such a shock because I knew that there are ups and downs in business. I knew that you have to have proper processes in place. I knew that marketing is really important. I knew that pricing is important. I kind of had this really good base, this foundation. And so even though it sounds crazy, and it was a bit, to just pick up at 21 years old and move like across the country and start a business as a pet photographer, which was a niche that didn't exist.
Yeah, a new niche. Wow.
I did have those foundations behind.
Yeah. And I can relate to that actually, because my parents have always had businesses. So I too was there stuffing paperwork. I did accounts and bits and pieces for them and data entry and stuff. So I think it does set you up for, oh, this is actually a possibility for me. Whereas I think if you're not necessarily surrounded by that, maybe you don't think it's as achievable as, it actually can be. So but that's really fascinating. So it sounds like everything came together, actually, the photography background, your love of pets, and obviously having all of those foundations in place. So tell us about how you marketed that business, because obviously, yes, you've got that experience, you've got that background, but how on earth did you get your very first client?
Well,
can you remember?
How did I get my first clients were before I left my hometown. And basically what I did was I connected with the local pet rescue. So I had this other part-time job at the time, and one of my kind of colleagues, I suppose you'd say, she was the fundraising coordinator for the local animal rescue. And we were chatting one day, and she was telling me about the rescue, which I didn't even know existed. And because it was super small, it had just started a few months earlier. And I said, like, well, what's your best fundraiser? And of course, in my mind, I was already like, like, how can I get in on this? And she said, well, they're really struggling and so on. And so I said, would you be interested in collaborating and doing something with photography? Because maybe I can come up with some kind of idea. And she said, yeah, I think that the team would be. And so I mulled it over for a while, and I went back with a proposal, which was to do a calendar. And remember, this is like 2011 or 12, maybe 2012. So I don't know. I don't know anybody else at the time that was doing it. It was just like us working together, trying to figure it out,
Yeah.
And definitely, like, if I did it now, I would do it really differently.
Of
but
course.
but at the time, that's what we did. So we mailed letters of invitation and like a coupon voucher to anybody that had adopted a pet so far. And we offered them, I think it was like $75 maybe sitting fee. And for $75, they got a photo shoot, their dog in the calendar, and I don't know, maybe like a 5x7 or something like that.
Okay.
And then people could purchase more if they wanted. Their audience was super small at the time, and I did not have all my ducks in a row.
Right.
So certainly it was not as profitable as if I did it again now, but it was really good learning. And I did make like a few sales that were in like the hundreds, a couple of no sales, I think, and one like particularly good sale, the interesting thing from that is that 3 of the people that I photographed for that very first marketing strategy have been like lifelong clients of mine since. And
That's
I've photographed
incredible.
them, yeah, like almost like either yearly or biannually, I guess you
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
since then. And even though like my pricing has increased by like, I don't even know how many fold, like a lot,
yeah.
they're still my clients. And I think that's really
Wow.
interesting because usually when you change price brackets, you lose a lot of your clients.
Yeah, you're moving up into a different sector of clientele potentially. Oh wow, that's really
Yeah.
cool. So
So that's interesting.
what an endorsement for your services then.
I hope so.
Well, absolutely. It's proof in the pudding, isn't it? That's really interesting. And so that obviously got the foundations of the business going. So did you look to replicate that model with other charities, with other dog rescues, for example, or was it something that you just tried that once and then you moved on to other things from a marketing point of view?
Thinking about it. I did do more partnership marketing, but not with rescues because I moved. And I remember I reached out to quite a few different rescues or shelters in Adelaide, but it doesn't always, it's not the right timing, or
Mm,
you have to wait until, if they're like a proper organization, you have to wait until they have a board meeting. And anyway, I found it quite hard to actually
right.
make something happen. I did eventually years later, but so it wasn't like the first few years anyway. In fact, the first years in Adelaide were really slow and really hard, if I'm honest,
Right.
because like I said, I was marketing both my new business and a genre, an entire niche. People were not
Absolutely.
looking for pet photography. People, I would have a stall at a market or an expo or something, an event, and people would be like, is this a thing? Like, do people pay you for this?
Yeah.
Which I think they still are in some parts of the world like that. But certainly like Melbourne, Sydney, LA, New York, it's completely a known thing in big cities now, fast
Yeah.
forward a decade or so. But yeah, back then it was hard. So it was quite slow the first couple of years. And of course, I was new. I was 21 years old, even though I had that kind of background of my family businesses. They were totally different businesses, none of which were luxury services like pet photography.
Yeah.
And so, I had to find my way of making it happen. But yes, coming back to your question, definitely partnership marketing was a big part of what did work, but not necessarily with rescues or charities.
Hmm.
My first great partner in Adelaide was a dog groomer, and we did like third-party marketing. So she would send Christmas vouchers to her clients basically, and she had like
Hmm.
loans and like a huge list of VIPs. So that worked really well. And
Nice.
yeah, actually a big portion of my clients in Adelaide over all the years were through third-party marketing.
Mm. That's interesting, and obviously a strategy that people can potentially go away and think about implementing themselves if they're not already. I think that is key in my experience as well, not only in the pet world, but in all aspects of photography, actually. There's always third parties that are relevant with a suitable client base that you can collaborate with and help each other essentially, and I see that working in lots of different ways. But it's interesting that you started with that and that you found mixed success but clearly learned a lot with it. And yeah, no, that's really cool. So what content wise have you had to do to market your business? Because I'm presuming then that was one aspect of it, the collaborations and the partnerships, but you must have thought, right, I really need to get out there with a website. I mean, did you have a website at that point, and how much content did you invest in at that point to get the word out?
Geez, oh, you take me back a few years here.
I know.
Okay, so when I first started, I was under Kirstie M Photography. And then I very quickly decided that I was specializing in pets. And so basically, in the beginning, like most people, I didn't have much money. And so I couldn't just pay for somebody to do my website or
Yeah,
logo or branding or anything like a lot of people. So I just made do. I also had
absolutely.
no idea how to build a website, and things like Squarespace did not exist.
Yeah, we have it so
And
easy
so
now compared, don't we?
yeah. And I also feel like old, not in age, but like in
You are not
business
old.
years now, famous. But anyway, so yeah, I kind of fumbled with learning WordPress. Luckily, I had a friend whose boyfriend was a web developer. So he helped me with the back end stuff, like buying a domain, I guess, getting a host, and like all of these things you
Yeah.
had to do then, email hosting. Anyway, it was a nightmare because, things were clunky and I didn't build it well and nothing was done really well. So basically, after about 18 months, I started or during that 18 months, I was saving portions of my sales to reinvest into my business, which of course we all want to do if we're able to.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I decided was my goal was to be able to afford like proper branding and a proper website. And so that's what I did basically. And I think around the same time as when I did the branding, maybe is when like Squarespace was a thing, or I learned about it at least. And so it kind of all came together pretty nicely because
Nice.
I kind of scratched around and collected some money. And yeah, like, guys, you do not need to do this, but I think maybe then you did. I paid a graphic design studio to design my logo and help me with my branding, which became Bits of Burnout Photography. And I love my logo. Even still today, I love it, even though I don't use it now since I rebranded again when I moved. But I really did love it. It was a lot of money. It probably didn't help me get more clients, this logo, but what it did was it made me feel more professional. And
I was
so
going to say, it gives you that confidence, doesn't it, to go out there and you look professional, you feel awesome about what it is that you're doing. So, an
exactly. And
investment worth making.
I think so. And they also helped me with like the colors and all of this kind of thing. And they told me exactly what the hex code was. So the yellow was the same yellow, like no matter if it was printed or digital or whatever.
Yes, yeah.
And that's something that I would have had to fumble my way learning myself. So there was this kind of extra perks. So yeah, then I did create a website, a new one that was decent, I think. And I had this beautiful logo and colors. I had business cards and flyers and all of this stuff. And then I started blogging, although honestly, back then, I don't really know why, because nobody was searching like searching for a pet photographer. It would have been smarter if I had used a proper strategy like what you would teach, Zoe, you know, like if I was blogging, not just about dog photos, but actually about wider things that pet parents would search. And that is what I do today, actually, that strategy, like
Yeah.
what you would recommend, Zoe. But yes, back then I didn't. I just put up like photo shoots that I did and made a blog because I thought I was supposed to put content out there. But, you know, we all learn.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, nobody knew what to do, did they? I think what you're explaining is that you were fumbling through, but you know, that's so true for everyone in business. And I think you come so far in the years that you have a business, and you look back and you think, gosh, I can't believe that's what I did, like you've already said. But you know, we're all like that. We all feel the same. And yeah, you've just got to, it's imperfect action, I think, is better than, you know, trying to
Exactly.
get it perfect, because you'll never be perfect anyway while you're learning. It's all new, isn't it? As a business owner, it's the first venture potentially for you, and it all sounds like you did all the right things and got started with content. So, because am I right to say that you're passionate now about content in the sense that you're blogging regularly with your current business and website, and you're gaining traction, you know, traffic through Google and organic means because of that. So you are continuing to invest in that and prioritize that in your business, aren't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, actually, my clients is split almost 50-50 between third-party marketing, so what I did from the very beginning,
Interesting.
and just still works, guys. Like if you're just wanting to, I just want to say this to the audience, the listener, like if you're just stuck, you don't know how to get clients in the first place, and you know, getting traffic to your website does take time, find partners who already have an audience and see what you can offer them to offer to their clients. It has to be a win-win-win, like win for you, win for the client, and win for the other business. But if you can make that happen, like that is a free way to get clients, and it can be pretty instant. Like, I mean, not one day to the next, but like within a month or 6 weeks. And so I highly recommend that strategy. But you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. And so third-party marketing is great, and having as many different partners as possible obviously helps with that. But it's also nice to have another completely different kind of marketing stream, and also to attract a different type of client as well. And so, you know, my clients that come to me through the third party marketing, perhaps they weren't actively looking. So this is, sorry, fast forward to today where I'm running Classico Portraits and I live in Italy, and my clients are mostly tourists, and I don't speak Italian very well still. And so that's why I'm not really targeting pets as much locally. But
Makes
for the
sense.
families, yeah, the families that are traveling that I photograph here, if they come through third party marketing, a lot of the time they're not actively looking for a photo shoot when they're in Italy. Maybe it hasn't even crossed their mind that it's an option, but then they're given a voucher or a push from their hotel or whoever the partner is. And that's why they end up booking the shoot for me. So maybe they've already paid for a lot of their trip and they weren't planning to budget for an expense like mine, a photography experience. And so, you know, some of them end up being amazing clients, and some of them are on my lower spend end, which is around the €2,000 mark, €2,500, which, to clarify, I'm traveling like a lot. So that's quite a low spend. So, I want another avenue of clients coming in. And the best for that for me is definitely if they come from Google, because those people are actively looking for a photographer at the time that they're planning their travels, which means they're allocating a budget for it.
Absolutely.
And that's where the content stuff comes in so strongly, and why I'm spending so much time on it, even though, it's free and easy and hands off for me to go through third party, because it's just rinse and repeat. I don't even have to talk to them, basically, apart from just saying like, hey, I still love you guys, thanks so much, otherwise it's hands off. Whereas the blogging is, it takes time, obviously, but for me it's absolutely worth it. I mean, I had just a few months ago a client spend €12,500 who came through Google.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the average salary in Italy is like €1,500 a month. So just put that in perspective.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's quite intense. I mean, that's not every day. That was like an incredibly high spend. But if I didn't spend time on my content marketing, so that's blogging and getting guest blogs and stuff like that, then I wouldn't be ranking on Google, and she would never have found me, and she would have probably spent instead, I don't know, €500 with somebody else, getting a fraction of the service of what she wanted, this particular client. And so I would have missed out on her. She wouldn't have had the same experience, because nobody else here offers the full experience that I'm offering.
Yeah, you're unique in that sense, aren't you, where you are?
Exactly. And so absolutely, I'm a big believer in content marketing, and I hope that like by sharing that little story that can inspire somebody else to get into blogging and everything else.
Yeah, because like you say, it takes time, and it can be like the last thing on everybody's priority list until you actually start getting results like that. You start ranking, you start seeing an increase in traffic, and you start having people comment, oh, I read that blog. Or someone said to me once, I've read every blog on your website. And I was like, really? At that time, this was years ago, but they were ready to work with me. And I did find that for me was what moved the needle. It was the fact that they'd read everything that I had to offer online, and much like they're probably doing in your case, or certainly the articles that are of interest to them, but very much getting a sense of your vibe, your expertise, you're nurturing them if you're doing the content properly, strategically, that is, putting the idea into their head, but then also giving them compelling reasons as to why this is a great investment, showing examples, doing that whole nurture piece. Yeah, it really does work. And I know people are out there still saying, oh, what's the point? Why bother? I'm going to just keep doing reels and get great visibility, for example, on Instagram. But I'm a bit like invest in your website, invest in your content. And it's great to hear that. Wow, that result is phenomenal.
Well, yeah, and they're different audiences, Zoe. I mean, this client that just spent that pack of money with me, she's not on Instagram.
Not on Instagram.
She's
yeah,
a grandma.
Exactly.
Like, she's not on Instagram. She is not on TikTok. Like, I would never would have found her in particular through any other avenue other than Google, or if her hotel had have given, or her villa had have given her a voucher for me. They're the only two ways she would have ever found out about me. And I do believe, like, if I look back at my high spending clients, they're almost all the same. My second highest spending client, she's young, like in her 40s, but she's a high level executive. She has zero time. The time that she has is spent with her son and her husband, and that is definitely not online. And the rest of the time, she's traveling all over the country because of her work. Absolutely, she's not on social media. There's no way, even though she's in the age demographic to be. And even like to a lot of my younger clients, I let them know anything you purchase in print, you're going to get as digital form, because that's my pricing model. And I often then add like, so you can share on social media, blah, blah, blah. And that client in particular that I've just mentioned, the 40-year-old executive, she was like, oh no, we don't need it for social media. And that's a common thing I'm hearing through my really high spending clients. They're not coming to me to post something on social media because they're not active on social media themselves. They're not about sharing their life with the world, other than like on their own walls where their real friends would come and see it. And so for me personally, knowing my audience and knowing the audience I want to attract more of, there is absolutely no point in me doing TikTok. And if you look on my Instagram, probably my last post was a month ago. Like, I am super inactive on socials. I just put enough so that people know I'm still alive.
Exactly.
And that's all I stick to, because I know my audience. And so instead of doing TikTok, which I would hate, it's not my thing, I spend the time instead putting these blogs together, which by the way is also not
Yeah.
easy for me. Like I said, I'm not really an academic. I don't really love writing or anything
Yeah.
like that. But I look at it like a creative outlet, and I try to get creative with it. I try to get fun with it. I follow your like formula, Zoe. And honestly, it really, I know like I'm banging on about it, but it really has been so great for me to find these extra clients that wouldn't have come to me otherwise. And not just blogging, but also like the content on the website as well, which I hired a professional copywriter for. And I'm really glad I did. That was money well
Yeah.
spent. Sales pages, just having like well written, well structured content
Yes.
that
And
really
that
answers people's questions.
And that is so true. Your website really tells a story. It paints the picture of why you got into photography, which we've touched on in this interview, but the fact that you are so passionate about capturing those family moments, and that obviously molds nicely into your story as a business owner and what you're doing now. And I think that comes across really well, really compelling. And I think, like you say, that's a great investment, because that's there then for people to really understand what it is you're doing, why you're doing it, and to really feel that passion, and also get that connection between themselves and you just by purely reading that copy and seeing the beautiful photography as well, of course. But yeah, no, that's fascinating and really interesting to hear. Obviously, your take on social media. For those who are watching, listening, they might be well invested in social media and wondering why, if they're trying to reach that more luxury high-end client, why they're not getting those bookings. So I think it's, important to sort of be real about your ideal client. And obviously with all marketing, that's true, isn't it? I mean, you've got experience now in different businesses, in the pet world, obviously now in the luxury vacation photography industry, but also with your Pet Photographers Club as well, because you're doing the mentoring. So you needed in that sense to know who your clients were, what their pain points were, and what they need and what they need to hear and see and feel throughout. So you've got such a breadth of experience. Is there anything in particular about the mentoring side of the business that's been particularly effective with regards to marketing? You've grown that to, how many members do you have these days?
The Pet Photographers Club, it's really a side hustle, a passion project, honestly. Even still today, 17 seasons on, that's how it was started. And I've recently really brought it back to that. Like, I'm viewing it more as a hobby again now. Whereas before, like, there was a period, because, I'm not photographing. And this is honest for even like members of the Pet Photographers Club might listen to this. I think, we all go through different relationships with our businesses.
Yeah.
And yeah, with the Pet Photographers Club, definitely it was a bit, it was taking up a lot of energy for a little while, because I was stressed about how can I keep making sure I'm providing great content when I'm not really photographing pets much anymore. That was something that was
Right.
really
Yeah.
stressing me. But anyway, I am still photographing pets when I go back to Australia. And every now and again, I get to photograph pets here, which is pretty cool as well.
No.
I just did one a couple of weeks ago, and it was really fun. This amazing golden retriever in the middle of the historical centre in Lecce, which is in the south of Italy. And anyway, it was just really beautiful and fun. And also with the Pet Photographers Club, with the podcast, most of the information, well, first of all, it's not me sharing advice. I'm just the host, right? And so it's other experts. So that's all fine. But also a lot of the information that the guests are sharing is relevant to all kinds of business. And in fact, for Classico Portraits, I pick up lots from the Pet Photographers Club that I implement in
Yeah.
my business now, even though my audience is not pet parents anymore, typically when I'm here. Anyway, and so now I've kind of, in the last, I don't know, year, I suppose, I've kind of found my love again for the Pet Photographers Club, which I think I needed. Maybe I needed a little break from
Oh,
it or something.
that's great to
Yeah,
hear. I mean, 17 seasons in, I mean, goodness me, you've been doing it for a while. So I think you can be forgiven for having your interest ebb and flow, because that's, like you say, it's a big time commitment to create content, even if interviewing people, setting it up, doing the production behind the scenes, the editing, the publishing. I mean, all of this content, it does take time, and it's a fantastic resource, isn't it, for not only the podcast listeners who are getting it for free, but also then you've got your community, as you said, and the constant need to provide value for them as paying members. It's tough. Knowing what you know now, would you endorse the membership model?
oh, definitely. If somebody's wanting to create a community or something, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, it's a passion project. It always has been. So I've never put in, and back when it was the two of us either, kind of time or money investment to really grow it into like a proper business, because it was never that. And as you can tell from this interview, my photography is my main income by many fold. And I feel like if I was to split my time evenly between the two, then I believe my mindset would have to change, and the Pet Photographers Club would not be a passion project anymore. It would have to become a proper business. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's not fair on the members or the listeners, because that's not what it was ever about. And I do believe that it would change for them. And I don't know, for me, I get enough out of it. I mean, yeah, there's a membership and that covers the cost of, how it is, subscriptions and all the things to run it. Now I've made it easier. Like I said, I've refound the passion for it. And so one of the things to help with that was to ease kind of the time commitment. And so I have an editor that edits the podcast. So, the cost of the membership covers that, and all of these kinds of things. So back to your question, if somebody wants to start a membership, do I recommend it? I think yes, but know what your goal is, just like us. And if it's to make money, that's totally fine too. I mean, that's cool. Just be honest with yourself about that and put in a strategy that's going to make money. For us, back then when we started it, the pet photography community was pretty small, but growing really rapidly. And so we wanted to be part of that, instead of all of us, like, there was just me in Adelaide, there was Caitlin in Melbourne, there was, I don't know, Charlotte in Brisbane, like whatever. There was just like one of us per city. And so it's not like we could go out for coffee. And so
No.
our goal was to like bring those people together,
Create a
and
community, yeah.
and feel like, oh, we're not alone, and to share what we knew, and to have other people share what they know. And I'm trying to keep it that way, because that's how it started. And it was, for me, myself, I wanted that, and that's why
Absolutely.
we
Yeah.
created it. And so just, I think, know what your goal is, like anything, isn't it? Same with any
Know
business, I
your
guess.
ideal client, know your goal. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've created similar, not similar because it's very small scale, but communities is what it's all about. I mean, I think I've created locally when I first started. I'm in Dorset in the UK, and I created a PR freelancer community because, for that very reason, to connect with like-minded people and to give each other support. It was never a business, it was never a paid thing, it was just free meetups. But similarly with my PR savvy photographers Facebook group, it's just trying to bring people together and to help them connect and learn from each other. And that was the origin of that as well. And I think that is important. But of course, as the host, you benefit from the visibility in the industry, which of course you've got, as I said in the introduction, such a great profile as a result of constantly trying to support and obviously mentoring photographers and your peers, which is very, very commendable. And you've achieved so much. And wow, 17 series and, successful membership, is not easy. So as we're clearly talking through, the challenges are there, but no, you're very well renowned and very, very successful. So well done to you for sticking with it, and long may it last, hopefully.
Yeah, well, like I said, I do enjoy. I mean, now after a little bit of a up and down kind of love-hate thing for a few months, I do enjoy it. And it's usually when I've had a break from recording that I start to like overthink it. But then like I've recently just done like a whole bunch of recording, and I actually love it
You're
because
in the
I get to
flow.
ask,
Yeah.
yeah, and I get to ask the questions that also I'm interested in. It's not just for the audience. And so yeah, it helps my business, Classico Portraits. It makes me think outside the box a little bit.
Yeah.
It makes me feel less lonely because I'm actually chatting to like another
Yeah.
photographer that gets it.
Interaction with people, shouldn't be underestimated. It's so important, isn't it? And I think we're all, as solopreneurs, sort of behind our screens working away a lot of the time. Photographers obviously are interacting with clients, but yeah, it can be lonely, can't it? And yeah, I can
Yeah.
see the value of that, definitely.
Yeah. So it's nice to be back in the flow. Yeah.
Nice. So maybe it's just the fact that you need to work as you do in seasons with the podcast. You just take breaks from it to keep that passion alive. And I think we can all relate to that. We're not all wanting to blog every 5 minutes, but if we get into a flow, a creative flow with it, we can actually potentially create more content and then take a break and then come back to it. And I think that's totally normal and realistic. Can't all expect to be consistent machines when it comes to marketing and indeed in any aspect of our businesses, can we? It's a creative process at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And I think being honest with yourself for what your schedule looks like as well can help with that, because I'm coming into my quiet season now for my photography. And so it makes sense that I'm seeing less people. I've got less work. And so, not money wise, just time wise, I'm talking about. And so, of course, now I have kind of mental capacity to put back into the Pet Photographers Club. And, like I said, because I'm seeing less people, because I'm not shooting as much at the moment, then it's nice for me to kind of have an interview and chat with somebody, so just, I think moving forward, I will try to do this, like try to do a run. You'd think after 17 seasons I would have learned this by now, but apparently it's all new. I think I would try to repeat this again, like, not try to record during my peak season for Classico Portraits, because that's when it becomes a bit like a stress. But yeah, now that it's quiet season for Classico Portraits, it's nice to have the time to put back into Pet Photographers Club. So I'll probably try to just avoid that peak season moving forward for recording, and just record in advance.
Yeah. And I think photographers who are trying to fill their diaries can totally relate to that, in that sense. Like, you are naturally going to have busy periods, seasonal periods perhaps, and it's being aware of your boundaries, of being aware of your energy, and just being kind to yourself, and remembering that yes, this is a business, but actually you're the center of it, and if you're not happy and healthy and functioning, then everything's going to be impacted. So yeah, listening and being in tune with yourself, what your priorities are at the time, and those priorities change, don't they? So yeah, be kind to yourself. That's what I suppose what we're saying ultimately, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Kirstie, you've shared so much. Thank you. You've been really generous, sort of talking about from way back, and I really did make you think back to when it all started.
I hope it's all accurate.
I'm sure it is. And then also to talking about your more recent projects and endeavors, and it all sounds fantastic. And yeah, so great to hear that content is playing a huge part in helping to drive traffic and generate clients for you. So yeah, long may that continue as well. Thank you so much. Obviously, people listening, watching can find more about Kirstie at classicoportraits.com, and also the petphotographersclub.com. So do check out her work. And thank you ever so much again, Kirstie. It's been a joy to speak to you today.
Thanks, Zoe. Always nice to chat with you.